All right. Welcome, everybody, to our July Zero Waste Task Force. My name is Courtney Williams. I am founder of WAS, Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions. So glad you could join us for our topic this month, which is fast fashion, shift to thrift. So if you would, please introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your organization, if you're with one, and your location. And our icebreaker for this month is, what is your favorite local thrift shop? So by way of introduction, what is WAS, Westchester Alliance for Sustainable Solutions? WAS is an alliance of community organizations from across Westchester County working to close the Wheelabrator trash incinerator operated by Wind Waste Innovations in Peekskill, where the county's trash is burned. So our agenda for this month, I'm going to do a quick welcome and give some intro and background on fast fashion. And then we are joined by two local, I'm not sure how they would want to describe themselves, entrepreneurs, but sustainably minded. So Megan Rowe from Rivertown Thrift and Melinda Huff from Segundo Beso. And they are going to be talking about the work that they are doing to address and help us to avoid fast fashion and kind of build that circular economy that we really need if we're going to move to zero waste. And then, as per usual, we're going to stop with all the presentations and just have our community discussion and Q&A with our guests. And then we'll wrap up by, of course, taking action as we always do. So with that, I have let me just make sure that I am sharing appropriately so that you all have sound. Share sound. All right. And so with that, I'm going to start showing this short video from PBS about fast fashion that'll talk about some of the environmental impacts, how we got here, and then some of the solutions. If you can't hear it, flag for me and I will try and fix it.
Fast fashions, the goal is to make as much profit as possible in the shortest amount of time and with the least amount of cost.
I look at the whole life cycle of products when I investigate the environmental impacts. We spend a lot of time looking for technical solutions for what are essentially behavioral problems.
Landfilling and incineration may not be the only ways to manage the solid waste.
Me and little man here have just got a big order of clothes delivered, so I thought, why not do a little try-on haul? I feel like it looks quite classy, and I really like it with these jeans.
Fast fashion. You see it scrolling through your social media feeds, influencer try-ons and links, monthly subscription boxes, discount codes, the list goes on.
Fast fashion, the goal is to make as much profit as possible in the shortest amount of time and with the least amount of cost.
The options to a new outfit are endless and affordable, or so it seems. But the cost has to go somewhere, right? The fashion and textile industries make up 9% of ocean microplastic pollution a year, use about 15,000 chemicals, and take up close to 215 trillion liters of water, which could fill 86 million Olympic-sized swimming pools.
The fashion industry is probably responsible for somewhere between 2 and 8% of the total world's global carbon emissions that's being spewed out.
So how do we stay trendy while reducing the climate impact?
This presentation is made possible in part by a grant from the Orange County Community Foundation.
Today, American consumers purchase roughly 4 times as much clothing as they did over 4 decades ago. In Los Angeles alone, there are over 70 tons of textiles discarded annually.
100 million pieces of garment are pushed out every single year, and that doubles what it was in 2000, roughly.
Fashion as an environmental problem is fairly recent. It's gotten a lot of heat for waste that shows up in open dumps in the Atacama Desert in Chile, in West Africa. If we do those life cycle assessments of apparel and we get very consistent findings, the environmental hotspots are always material production, followed by what we call the use phase, which for apparel is basically washing and drying.
The big issue is when we scale things up to the magnitude that we need for clothing our world population, that's where we get into some big problems. There are many processes within the making a fabric, and there's also the question of new colors, new finishes. All that requires having chemicals to be able to produce that. Where you have to treat the fibers, adding chemicals, and then there's washing steps in between, whether those chemicals are synthetic or natural. That has a significant impact on the environment. There's a number of steps that modify the fiber surface so that you can actually have the dyes attached to the material. As the fabric is being used and worn, or even processed, they begin to shed these smaller particles. So these are materials that are being slowly released into the environment.
To know how we got to fast fashion, we have to go back in time. Prior to World War II, clothing production was still small scale, happening in workshops and mostly in people's homes. But the war created rations on fabric that made mass-produced fashion acceptable to the middle class, and clothing companies exploded across the country, churning out standardized items that we now take for granted.
I think fast fashion started with Zara. That term came from a New York Times article that talked about, at the time, that brand basically able to include a collection in 15 days, which is unheard of. So normally in the traditional fashion world, it's like you have 2 collections a year. But it did so well. They sold so fast. And that model worked so that you had tons of copycats, like small copycats to humongous, right, corporate copycats out there.
Shopping malls dominated while reducing costs. Going abroad and hiring local cheap labor were the norm. Then came the internet. With each passing decade, the amount of garments increased, but their quality, longevity, and labor costs decreased. This dynamic reached its zenith with fast fashion in the early 2000s, when online shopping began to replace malls, and companies produced clothing at an unprecedented pace.
Right now, the average American owns about 110 pieces of clothing. Now you can buy 6 seasons in a year. So I think that model of selling more, cheaper clothing, more collections, more trends, all kind of fed on itself.
At UC Santa Barbara, scientists are experimenting with and measuring microplastics that come off materials through a wash cycle.
I look at the whole life cycle of products when I investigate the environmental impacts. We realized that a significant amount of clothing is now lots of other uses of fibers and fabric, towels, linens, fabrics in cars, other transportation. My group actually did a big modeling study where we estimated that washing alone of this global apparel stock generates around 360 kilotons of microfibers. So there's no impact-free material to make apparel out of. There's a lot of research activities trying to understand what these microfibers that don't biodegrade, how they interact with these environments. We spend a lot of time looking for technical solutions for what are essentially behavioral problems.
We've known for a long time through other studies that the fibers that are released through domestic laundering ultimately end up in the soil and end up in the water. Our work is in collaboration with a big fast fashion industry. So we're working on a question that matters to them and it matters to all of us.
So we have 4 clothes today.
We're doing this study with collaborators in different places in the world using similar washing setups.
So we want to do a hot run?
Yeah, all around.
There's evidence that the type of the washing machine, for example, a top loader versus a side loader, that can make a difference. So the type of agitation, the temperature of the water.
The objective of the experiment is to determine how much mass is lost from synthetic garments during the washing process.
One of the biggest pollution sources is water, right? So whether that's using chemical dyes or washing jeans or just growing cotton by itself, there's so much water use. Actually, it's 2,500 gallons that's used to make 1 pair of jeans from beginning to end. What we want to do is not focus on the number, but instead to focus on what different alternative activities they could do. So instead, maybe they don't use the traditional way of washing jeans. There's lots of new innovative technology that's becoming more and more affordable.
And the soil is light. And then we can start now.
We meter the water coming into the washer. We capture the water that's leaving the washer. We filter that water. We dry the filter. We weigh that filter. And from that, we're able to determine the percentage of the original garment that was lost in the washing process.
Washing at cooler temperatures using colder water can decrease the amount of fibers that are emitted in machine laundering.
We actually measure the weight of microfibers obtained during the washing and drying. It's just a tiny amount, but if we use microscope to observe it, you can find there's millions of microfibers on this filter. Since millions of people actually do laundry every day, there are a huge amount of microfiber discharged into the air, the wastewater, and further into the ocean. So that could be serious, a big problem. I just measure the weight of the microfibers. So only about like 0.5 grams. Comparing to the weight of the garment, it's like 1 kilogram. So it's actually less than 0.1% of the garment. But however, this amount needs to multiply by millions.
Apparel companies actually tell their consumers to wash their clothes less than they do. Detergent companies tell their customers they should use less detergent. They can completely use cold water, get the same outcome. That's a very simple way to address multiple environmental issues generated by apparel. And then, of course, at some point, apparel becomes waste, and then we need to find ways to responsibly deal with this waste.
Landfilling and incineration may not be the only ways to manage the solid waste. We've talked about consumers and fiber emissions and domestic laundering, what goes down the drain in our households or what comes out of the dryer vent. And we've also talked about fast fashion as inherently being kind of sale and turnover of textiles and clothing in the hands of consumers, and that there's a waste stream from that. Part of the endeavor of the scientific community is to try to look at plastics altogether, but also synthetic textiles as a sort of plastic. Can we decompose those solid materials either into the building blocks of plastics and then make a similarly valuable item?
So what we're doing here is we're taking materials that would normally be put into the landfill when they're discarded at the end of their life and repurposing them through a process called pyrolysis, where we heat the materials up to just over 700 degrees Fahrenheit, and all of the materials that are non-carbon based basically burn off in the absence of oxygen, and we are left with a pure carbon kind of skeleton of the fibers. Okay, so it's been a half an hour. Turn off the power. You end up with something that's like almost like a carbon black that you can put into soils. You can use it in amendments. We end up with a usable material that is not being discarded and has many applications in industrial environments.
There's been some discussion and some attention to heat treatment that produces a charcoal-like substance that can be ground into a powder. And it really has a lot of the characteristics of other particles that are made and used widely in tire manufacturing and in building products, in printer's ink. It would generate an end product that we really need, and a lot of other things that we use on a daily basis. Of course, we have to do the studies that show that we're not causing some other kind of problem, or at least that we can prevent other emissions. Whether it's a cotton poly blend or pure polyester, whether it has one set of dyes that we don't really know about or another set, it would be fairly agnostic. It's early, but we're optimistic, so we can take care of a lot of problems. To me, that's very exciting because there's a different mindset in that, and that we could scale up.
Scientists are not the only people looking at different ways to explore limiting the environmental impact of fast fashion. Proferio Gutierrez, a Zapotec textile artist and natural dyer, is using ancestral knowledge to understand the complexity of transforming nature into artistic material.
Making clothing historically was purely for everyday use and for ceremonies. As an artist, it is very important to continue looking back into the culture that allows me to connect with the traditional practices. Fast fashion does not honor clothing. They think of it as more of a disposable. We're so deep in the culture around us about consumption, how we're being thought to consume things. I myself trying to navigate how things could be made in a different way and how slowness could be incorporated into this industry. Growing up, the tradition of natural dye was already extinct in my culture and in my community. Chemical dyes, repetitiveness, making something fast had already taken over and oppressed these processes. For me as a maker, I had to relearn these processes. You have to know the date and time where these plants are grown because not all the plants gives color. I'm gonna harvest here a little bit. My work is driven by the cycle of nature and availability of material. It is an instinct. Everything has its cycle. You have to know the science and the chemistry because the plant or the flower is yellow. That does not mean it's going to give you the same color. When I think about harvesting every season, I'm actually collecting a DNA of nature that represents that time in history that will never be repeated again. What side of the mountain you're harvesting? Is it one side of the mountain that receives a lot of sunshine? Or is it a side of the mountain that it's mainly shade? How the rainy season, was there a drought? All those things are also going to affect converting these plants into color. It's going to change a little every season. And so you always having to adjust your recipes. Natural dye uses a lot of water. You're also going to need a lot of water to grow those plants if you want to scale it. I think the question is, can we look at the producer's integrity and respect towards nature? But if it's not done with a true consciousness, then you're terrorizing nature. Thinking about slowness and natural dyes. I don't know if big industry could just switch into natural dye and help that way. If we could rethink things as a consumer, I hope that eventually it's going to then push bigger industry to rethink their way of making clothing.
Fast fashion brings in fast cash. There are about 113 million metric tons of textiles produced every year.
In the US, the fashion market revenue was about $365 billion. So that kind of gives an indicator of like how huge that market is.
One organization helping people and businesses rethink waste is Homeboy Industries, long known for transforming the lives of the formerly incarcerated. They officially launched Homeboy Threads in 2023, a certified social enterprise offering ways to reuse and recycle clothing and textiles.
We started getting approached more by companies that were asking us if we could do anything with textiles or help them out with apparel. It often requires paying more than it costs to landfill things to recycle them. So we started a little bit of a pilot project.
One of the fun parts about the job, too, I think, is finding new channels for things. Our first step, we have a really skilled group of people working in triage who basically get a pallet of a ton of things that are all mixed together usually, and then designate if that item should be resold, donated, or recycled/downcycled. From there, we have a team that works to separate different fiber type and then aggregates that material, bales it, and prepares it to send downstream to recyclers. Every step in the process, we're doing as much as possible to keep apparel and items out of landfill.
Fast fashion.
Apparel and items out of landfill. Last year, we processed about 1 million pounds of material. In terms of this being a good working model, what we're really good at is the sortation process and making the correct decisions on where items should go so that we can channel them to their best use.
Clothes go through triage first. They come off the pallet. We separate them from wholesale, donation, recyclable to e-com. So this is e-com. After we're done quality control, we come here, put them on these wooden hangers right here, and we send them to be listed. Once we finish that process, it's sent to be photographed.
I view the item as a customer would. When I receive the item, I want the item to be the way that it says right here in the descriptions. What it is, the size, the color, the brand. These are all the little details that we want to make sure that we have in here. That way, you know, the customer is satisfied at the end of the day with the product that they received.
The business right now is really about helping brands and manufacturers reduce their footprint and their environmental impact by increasing the amount of recycling and reuse of their products.
It's estimated that approximately 15% of clothing and other textiles are currently reused, but 95% of materials used in clothing and textiles can be recycled. From zippers and buttons to even certain fabrics, we might just need to look at that cardigan differently.
How do you influence the manufacturers and the brands and the retailers and the buyers to get to a point where we embrace circularity? That's the million-dollar question. Circularity is this idea that what we produce, we use it again and again, and we are responsible about what that end of life looks like. We have to think about circularity as just kind of the go-to, not the alternative.
I know some people do follow fashion, and for them it's important to change clothing on a regular basis. But the more you can use the clothing you have, the longer you can use it, and the more you can pass it along to others to use it, the better it will be.
Slow down is hard. People love new things and new gadgets. What I would say is focus on quality and value, and then focus on your health. A lot of these materials are not good for your skin.
One simple way to do it is just buy better quality apparel, better quality fabric, better quality cutting and sewing, and just use it much longer. But there's also a lot we can do as individuals and in a collective action, because all we have to do is change our behavior to dramatically change the environmental impact. I think one of the key things that I hope the industry will embark on in terms of creative solutions is to completely rethink their business models.
When you have consumers who start understanding the negative impacts of fast fashion, their purchase behavior starts to change. When they think about like, oh, I didn't know that someone's not getting paid a fair wage, or that they're using traditional jeans making and that, direct discharges all these chemical dyes into the river. And I think consumers start thinking about different purchase choices. And when the consumer does that, that influences the brands.
In 2024, California passed the Responsible Textile Recovery Act, requiring companies to offer a plan to their consumers for the end of their products' lives. Companies like Levi's and Patagonia already have programs in place to return products for recycling or reuse.
So maybe we could change our mindset a little bit. Instead of going for the latest fashion, think about what's the best made article of clothing? What's going to really last? What can I pass down to my kids, my grandkids? Those are things we can think about.
The future of the climate and environment needs sustainable solutions that stay on trend while getting the most out of our material goods. So when you go to buy a new outfit, ask yourself, what will you do with all those clothes when you're done with them?
Okay. So I have to admit that I did worry about including that segment given their mention of pyrolysis, because that really is just a fancy word for incineration. And for those of us who've been fighting plastic pollution, we know that you're effectively just burning the plastic, and then all of the material that comes out of that is contaminated with PFAS, and then you're going to use it to build a home or as ink to write a letter or whatever, and you risk spreading that and making PFAS contamination. But I do think there was a lot of useful information in that video, and I hope it kind of gives us all like a shared understanding of the problem and some of the solutions that are out there so that we can proceed with our discussion. So with that, Megan, can I hand it off to you to talk about Rivertown Thrift?
Yes. Hi, I'm Megan. I coordinate Rivertown Thrift. We are a pop-up thrift store in Hastings-on-Hudson, which means we pop up once a month in our Hastings Community Center. We are not a brick and mortar. Instead, we use the community closet that already exists at the community center in exchange for keeping the community closet clean and stocked for people who need clothes all year round. We use the space once a month to take donations, sell them back same day, and all the money goes to the Hastings Food Pantry. It has been an organic happening. Our story goes that a local woman by the name of Amy De La Roca started doing this out of her garage. She took donations, sold them back to her friends. and all the money she sent to local services. This grew very big, and she became very overwhelmed with the amount of textiles that she was ending up with at the end of the day. So she reached out to some local people. Fast forward, here we are. We found a space. Our long-term goal is to have a storefront where we are either using grants to pay for rent, or, you know, our nice philanthropist neighbors paying for our rent. We're working towards that to make clothes, secondhand clothes, more accessible to our community. In Hastings alone, the food pantry serves 140 families a month. So the services, the money that we make and the services that the community center provides is immense. And Feeding Westchester just lost a huge grant. So the money that we raise every single month is crucial now to their efforts. And so we are now being asked to make more money. So we're working towards finding a way to do that. The project has been really fun to coordinate. It kind of fell on me because I am really passionate about thrifting and not buying new clothes. I think it's something that kind of happened during COVID, after living in New York City for so many years, and seeing just the amount of trash that's on the side of the street all the time, and the amount of takeout and just garbage. And then it really became like anxiety inducing during COVID, and moving out of the city and needing to be on a budget and meeting other like-minded people. It became very aware that I became aware that the solution is not in donations. It is not in, finding a better solution for our waste. It is just not making any more textiles. It's something like 100 billion garments are made a year, which is bonkers. I've started making clothes. I upcycle clothes also, and I've started putting statistics on clothes to try to finding new ways to instill into people that our consumption is the problem. We can't, fast fashion will exist, corporations will exist, and they will not stop trying to sell us a story and sell us low-cost goods. And so finding all the different ways to reach people has been a new mission of mine. Over the summer, we've done a couple markets. The first one was the Earth Day Festival for Austining, for green Austining, which was a really eye-opening experience, seeing and talking to all the different organizations in Westchester and beyond that are doing like serious groundwork and nonprofit work to change our minds and our systems. So it was really motivating. And then I did the Hudson River Music Festival, sold there. And it just became apparent that Rivertown Thrift's work is not only in raising money for our food pantry and giving accessible, affordable clothes to our communities, but changing people's minds, convincing people to think about where does it come from and where does it go. It is not just the having that we should consider. Yeah, there's a lot that I just word vomited, but this has been a new journey for me. The Rivertown Thrift is just a little over a year in the making at the community center. So we're growing, and I'm learning as we take in donations and people give us good stuff and also a lot of not good stuff, and figuring out now as a group of volunteers where we then push forward the goods that we cannot keep in our small closet space at the end of the day, and trying our best to make sure that nothing goes to waste. And it is really hard with the excessive amount of clothes that people just consume on a daily basis. And yeah, just understanding that we have responsibility with our dollar on so many levels.
Thanks so much, Megan. Our next guest before we do a discussion is Melinda Huff. Melinda, thanks so much for joining us, and you should feel free to share slides if you wish.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that I finally am making one of these because I just discovered you guys a few months ago and the scheduling worked out for today. My name is Melinda again, and I have a brand of clothing called Mirame. And I've had the brand for almost 15 years now, and all of our clothes are made in small batches in New York City. They're all made out of rescued materials. And then in the fall of last year, I finally took the plunge and opened a boutique. We are a 4-person designer collective in Cold Spring, New York, another river town, which seems to love the arts, so I really appreciate it there. And we do a lot of what we saw in the video. So I did put together a very DIY slideshow for you guys in about an hour. So I'm going to share it with you. I don't know if it's going to form out the right way, but I just figured it would give me some cues to kind of talk about what we do. So one sec. Okay, let me go to full screen. Okay. Oh. Hold on. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is our boutique. It's called Segundo Beso, which in Spanish means second kiss. And this is an ode to our mission to take things that are already out in the stream and give them
Melinda, sorry to interrupt. It's not, we're seeing a black screen, I think.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh. Let me see. Oh, it's paused. Your screen sharing is paused. Resume share. Huh. Odd.
Maybe go, we were seeing it before it went into full screen. Maybe take out a full screen and we'll just see it.
Okay, if not, I'll just stop sharing. I don't want to disrupt things. Okay. I will just. All right, let me try one more time, and then if not. Okay. Can you see it now, or is it black again?
We got it.
Okay. So this is a little background about me. I started in the business because both my grandmothers, when they immigrated to the States, they were seamstresses and they lived very close to me. So I would watch them sew all the time. And I was like, wow, you have this idea. And then you're making it happen with your own hands. Like, what a beautiful process. And so they taught me how to sew. And then I got a few internships as a sample maker and learned how to sew, or learned how to work with other designers and oversee their sewing process. So after I left my favorite designer, which was Norma Kamali, I decided, well, I know the fabrics, I know the factories, so I'm going to go out on my own. And so that's when I launched my brand. And then our mission as a brand and as a store is to say no to fast fashion and yes to made to measure and small batch. So there are brands out there that are doing what we're doing, right? So we only make like 2 or 3 of a kind. We like to test everything. We don't ever make like 50 or 100 because to me, that seems irresponsible. So I want to see how a woman feels in it, how it's wearing, how it's washing. You know, I always ask my customers to send pics so I can see how it fits on them, ask for feedback. So that's very important to us. And then we really follow what I call our 4 pillars of sustainability. And I think that it really is sort of our North Star, and it kind of brings what we do into a bigger picture. So our number 1 tenet is collaboration. Our boutique is very tiny, but as I mentioned, we're 4 designers in there, and then we have guest artists all the time. So in the middle, we have a painter here, and he paints to order. So we have him come like once a month, and people can bring something from their closet that they no longer love or that they want to spice up, or they can pick up something from the store, and then he can paint anything from like a little monogram to an elaborate scene. And it's just beautiful to share that with people. I also have other artisans from around the world. This photo right here is an artisan from Guatemala, and she is a descendant of, or is a Mayan and descendant of, you know, the traditions way back. And it's just so, enamoring to watch her work and weave her jewelry and her textiles. So what I like to do is connect with other artisans like her from around the world, but usually I meet them here in New York, and then I'll bring them into the store to either be a guest designer for a month or do activations with them. And I think that this is a really beautiful way to offer something interesting and exciting to a customer without having to produce a lot of goods at a time. So it's a very, I feel, responsible way to give the customer that sense of newness. Another crucial tenet of ours is zero waste. We use all of our remnants. So I just put a picture of a few different items that I upcycled from silk remnants. So there's scrunchies, sleep masks, and then I made rosettes and bows, and I appliqued them onto some vintage denim. We also have this fabulous chair made out of remnants of some silk pieces. If you can see our curtain in the back, that's made all out of jeans that we cut up and sewed together, and it's actually our fitting room curtain, down to the rug, which is pieces of denim that are sliced up and then woven. And I actually have a guest artist coming in a few months that can do this for customers too. So they can bring in their no longer used clothing and she can cut it up and give it new life. Another really important goal of the brand and the store is community engagement. None of this exists in a vacuum. And I think if we think about sort of climate crisis, it can be overwhelming and anxiety causing, as some of us have talked about in the chat. So just coming together and making this sort of sustainability and this customization sort of a group experience, I think lifts people up, and it also inspires one another to find new ways to reuse their goods and give them new life. And these are some different artists and groups that we've collaborated with in the store for different activations. And then lastly, customization, right? So this skirt, this customer brought in, it was too short for her. So my partner Mauricio cut up some fabric he had, and he added this little panel that it was a little too long. So he's measuring it for her on the body. Our other customer here had this lace top, but she didn't like the way it fit around the armhole. So he's tailoring it for her. So, you know, we really want people to buy high quality, buy less, but wear it more. If you don't like the way it fits anymore, come back, we'll tailor it for you. We also have customers that, you know, I had a gentleman come in with his tie-dye that he loved, but the ribbing on the neckline and the cuff was all frayed. So I sourced him some new ribbing and replaced it for him. And he was just so thrilled. So, you know, our mission is to really keep that craft tradition alive and spread the word and let people know that they don't have to discard an article of clothing when they're done with it. They can bring it to us and we can give it new life. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I forgot the last slide that has our address, but I can share it in the chat with you guys.
Yeah, and links to websites as well, or how to join. I know, Megan, you have a Facebook group that folks can join. So any questions for Melinda or Megan about the work that they do, their experiences, how to find them, any of that? I do have, oh, Paul, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Do you have like a list of harmful products or textiles that we should try to avoid if we're looking to purchase clothing, you know, just so that we could be as environmentally conscious when looking to, you know, purchase clothes? Or...
I can chime in on that. So you know, anything like they talked about in the video that has synthetic fibers, that will all, you know, that can leach into your skin, into the water. So, you know, synthetics are largely a no-no. They are creating like mushroom textiles and different, you know, sort of plant-based textiles now, but they're not so much in the stream. There is some mushroom leathers available, but it's really niche and hard to find right now. But I'm hopeful that within like 5 or so years, it should be more accessible. And then also I always tell my customers, and with my own clothes, I wash everything in cold water. I hang dry. I mean, number one, that's better for the planet, as we, you know, learned in the video. And also it adds to the longevity of your clothing. You have less fading, fraying, shrinkage. So I always recommend doing that.
Yeah, I also do. I have drying racks, and we mostly dry stuff and wash on cold. It makes everything hold up even longer. Like let my kids put holes in it versus having it just like wear out from the dryer. Any other questions? I do have info to share on like Westchester's textile recycling program. But before I go back to the slideshow, any questions? And of course, feel free to put in the chat as well.
I can also add to what I was talking about.
Oh, okay, let's let Megan add, and then we'll go to Lisa. Go ahead, Megan.
I just as to keep everybody on the same page about and like new resources for sustainable textiles. Rivertown Thrift hosts swaps as well. And our next one is on August 1st. We do a buy-in scale, $1 to $20, so as much as you want. All the money goes to the food pantry and swapping clothes, and highly suggest everyone host a clothing swap within their own family or friend group. It is a really fun way to just keep your clothes fresh without having to buy anything new.
All right, Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, a few things. Well, really amazing presentations by both Megan and Melinda. So thank you. And I'm really interested in going to both places. I've never been to either. They both look really amazing in their own different ways. And so I want to, I definitely want to visit. I want to donate to Megan's group also. And then I also just kind of want to learn, is there any way, you just mentioned, Megan, hosting clothing swaps. That seems like such a great, fun thing to do, you know, in communities or neighborhoods. I just, you know, I think I might need some inspiration on how to make that happen. But, you know, so any advice about that, I think would be great.
Yeah, so I do it kind of virtually. So I did recently join the Facebook group that Megan administers, which is Rivertown Thrift. But I've also been on my local Buy Nothing page. So there's Rivertown's Give and Take. And then because I'm in Peekskill area, there's a Peekskill, Cortland, Yorktown area Buy Nothing group. And the Buy Nothing movement is an excellent resource. And my Buy Nothing group actually has traveling bags of clothes. And so you sign up based on your size and the bag and your geographic area kind of, and the bags make a big loop around the community, and you put in what you have to pass along and you take out what you want to keep. And it's a great way to kind of be able to do that clothing swap, but you don't have to do it with friends if you're, because somebody mentioned, Elaine, maybe that everyone has to be the same size if you do it with your friends, whereas you can kind of do it with the broader community. And I feel like thrifting plus the Buy Nothing movement has really made me less like worried about keeping or like passing things along, because I feel like they come back to me when I need them. So like somebody just posted the other day, like, I need a jewel toned dress for this thing, and I can do this range of sizes because I can take it in as necessary. And I had 3 things in my closet, that I hadn't worn in a while, and I was like, you know what, here you go. And if they work for you, great. If not, pass along to someone else. So if I would definitely encourage everybody to look at your local like buy nothing group if there is one.
I don't
Lila.
know if, yeah, I don't know if there are other Croton people on here, but I was gonna say the same thing you did, Courtney. I've never connected with them. I haven't done it, but they do the same by size rotation thing here in Croton, if there's any other Croton people here.
Yeah, and we were talking before we started the Zoom of possibly organizing a swap, having WAS organize an in-person get together where we can swap items. All right, so I think feel free to keep using the chat both for questions and for responses. I'm gonna just show some slides on the counties textiles recycling. So on the left is what is from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And you can see the piece of the pie here that is textiles that makes up municipal solid waste. So in Westchester, by and large, the amount of textiles that get thrown away in the garbage, they go and get burned at the trash incinerator, the largest industrial air polluter. But as I've said many times before, Westchester County already has programs in place to divert about 90% of what we're currently burning at the incinerator. And so, specifically looking at textiles, I figured I'd take this opportunity to share with everybody how Westchester County does their textiles recycling. So, DEF stands for Department of Environmental Facilities, and they partnered with HelpSee to expand the county's textiles program because they do have the household materials recovery facility in Valhalla. I have the address on the next slide. But the municipalities listed here participate in curbside textiles recycling. And you can just click on the HelpSee pickup link there, and they'll come and pick up your textiles at your house. And if you have any questions about it that are not that are not made clear on the website, and I think Lila's dropping some of these links into the chat for you. The recycling helpline is there. That's the county's helpline that you can call up and they'll walk you through and answer any of your questions. But this is the kind of stuff that they're taking. So the clothing, linens, shoes, accessories, clean, dry, and odorless. And their location is 15 Woods Road in Valhalla. And if you do have stuff that is I mean, pretty much you shouldn't be donating it if it's not clean, dry, or odorless because you're just ruining anything else that someone might have to donate. So even if the item is not like wearable, like the shirt is stained or the pants are completely ripped to shreds or your dog chewed up the pillowcase, still have it be clean and dry and odorless, but then you can still drop it off for textiles recycling because those materials can be reused even if the material is not being reused as a shirt or a pillowcase because of damage. But don't if it's like filthy and wet, do not. And especially like I'm sure a lot of us have volunteered for clothing drives and things like that, and like the stuff that people donate like reeking of animal feces or urine, it's really not what you should be donating. But so that is information on the county's program. And we always end these zero waste task force meetings with action. And so if your municipality is not listed there as participating in the HelpSee Curbside Textiles Recycling Program, your job, your action is to do the outreach to your municipality. And I was not pleased to see that Peekskill, which is my municipality, and obviously the municipality literally breathing the tailpipe of the trash incinerator that's burning all the textiles that don't get recycled, we are not participating. So I am going to be reaching out to my municipal leaders and encouraging them to begin participating. So I encourage all of you, if your muni is not listed there, to do that outreach and encourage them and let them know. And the HelpSee website also has a great video that we didn't have time to show tonight, but that talks about how their program works. And so as long as I'm just still showing slides, I'll go through it. Like, thank you all for coming tonight. If you want to join us and get more involved with WAS and our efforts to put these programs together, do the education and outreach throughout the county, we encourage you to join our core group. You can just shoot us an email at WASSpeekskill@gmail.com. We have our weekly meetings at 6 p.m. on Wednesdays, and we have a kind of small working group that meets 2:30 on Mondays. And really, we take all comers, because whatever you have to offer is something we most definitely can make use of. And we are taking August off. So our next Zero Waste Task Force meeting won't be until September. And as is our tradition, September is back to school time, and we focus on youth. So we are again going to have our local youth here in Westchester that are working towards a sustainable planet. We've got more Girl Scouts working on fast fashion and e-waste recycling. And certainly if you know of a young person or a youth group that is doing this kind of work that we should learn more about and we should highlight, please put them in touch with us. We would love to feature them in our September meeting. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing so we can continue with discussion, because I saw there was some stuff going on in the chat. Elaine said the Valhalla Recovery Facility is great. Be sure to make an appointment. Yes. And Megan dropped the info for Rivertown Thrift in the chat. And I think, I know, Megan, I think you had like a workshop kind of event coming up where people could upcycle the items that they bring, right? Did that happen yet, or it's coming up?
It did not happen yet. The date is July 20th, so in a couple weeks on Sunday. It's from 3 to 5 p.m. at our local Maker Hive right in Hastings. All the money also for that is donated to the food pantry. We're going to upcycle clothes, so you can bring a garment that you already have. How we're going to be upcycling is by stamping. So with found objects like scissors or the bottom of a celery, but also we'll make some stamps. We'll also have clothes to provide if you want to use something that we have. It's just like a fun way to learn how to reuse your clothes. It's something that I do just all day long as a hobby, and just trying to inspire people to do it. So all ages, please join. It's really, really fun to play with your clothes.
Excellent. And Melinda put the info on Segundo Beso in the chat. And I also dropped the article that I read in the Highlands Current about the store that kind of prompted me to reach out to Melinda, because I was like, yes, this is right up our alley.
Thank you for sharing that.
All right.
We do also have, actually, it's the same day as your event, Megan. We have a drag tea coming up on the 20th, and then we have monthly events. So if you guys follow us on Instagram or join the newsletter that pops up on the website, you can find out about all of our community activations.
That's awesome. Yes. So I think, if I'm actually, is anybody wearing a thrifted item? Like, this is my thrifted tank that I am wearing tonight. And actually my earrings, my daughter makes upcycled jewelry. So she thrifts broken jewelry or goes to Retake Remake in Peekskill, which is the creative reuse location, and sources all of the beads and the earring loops and all those things. So I'm very, very thrifted today.
I want to share, recently I sent my husband's wisdom teeth to a metalsmith to get sealed. So Upcycle everything is my is my motto.
Definitely falls under the category of creative reuse. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming out tonight on a summer vacation time. I am up in Maine right now on my summer vacation, but it was good to see all of you, and hope to see you all at some of these shops and pop-ups and events in the future, and have a great rest of your summer, and we'll reconvene in September with our young people and learning about all the work that they're doing to save us and our planet. So thank you all for coming. Have a great summer. Thank you to our speakers, Megan, Melinda. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Courtney, for having us.
Courtney, wait a minute before you disconnect.
Sure thing.